Good morning, everyone. So, welcome to the second term. As you know, we're gonna be working on food industry in this term, like in science, mathematics, and of course in English. So, with the first topic that we're gonna start working in this term, it's about countable and uncountable nouns. I'm gonna explain you a little bit more. If you have questions at the end of the video, you can write it down in Edmodo or by email. Okay, so let's gonna start with something very simple. Let's gonna remember a kind of vocabulary related about food, right? So something that we eat very daily, for example, is that we have bread, and something that we have during breakfast. We have butter. Just remember what's the meaning of butter. Mantequilla. Okay, we have fish. We have cake, something very sweet when we have our birthday. Rice too, it's something that is very common in Colombian food. We have French fries, you can say French fries or fried potatoes. Beans, something very common in the Colombian food, these are frijoles. And we have down here, we have avocado. And finally we have sausage. Just vocabulary that's really helpful for you. Okay, now let's continue about here. In this class we're gonna talk about the quantities and the way that we count food or not, right? Okay, for example, let's gonna check it out here. Look at the picture that we have here about this guy here. We have cupcakes, right? So we want to know about the quantity. So how many cupcakes are there? So when we have how many, it's asking about the quantity of a noun, of a word, of a object, right? In this case, we're asking about the number of the cupcakes, right? So we have 1, 2, 3. So how many cupcakes are there? There are 3 cupcakes. Okay, next example. How many tomatoes are there? Again, we're asking about the quantity. The quantity of what? About tomatoes. So according to the picture we have here, we can have 2 options. We have a box that is full of tomatoes, or we have the specific quantity of tomatoes, 45 tomatoes. So how many tomatoes are there? So be careful with that. I'm going to explain you that later. How many tomatoes are there? We're asking about the quantity. So the quantity in this case, we have 2 options. There is a box, right? There is only one we're talking about. Or if I want to count one by one, we have 1, 2, 3, we have 45 tomatoes. There are 45 tomatoes. Okay, next one. How many cookies are there? Like in the example about tomatoes, we have 2 options. We have the first one that we have a pack, or inside of the pack we have 6 cookies. So we have 2 choices. First, how many cookies are there? There is a pack. It means that we're talking about only one pack. Or if we want to be more specific, so there are 6 cookies, right? So according to the package here, that it says that it's 6. So there are 6 cookies. We're talking about plural. Okay, next example. How much? Okay, this is gonna be different. So the first one we talk about how many. So you will see the difference at the end of this session about what is the difference between how much and how many. So in this one we have how much water is there. Again, we're talking about the quantity in this case. According to the picture we have, well, actually we have just an example. Well, there are not 6. There are 1, 2, 3, and 4 actually. So is it possible to say that we have 6 waters? Well, it sounds weird, you know, it's really weird. So in English we have to keep in mind that there are certain nouns, certain words that we can count. We can use numbers to count it. Sometimes in Spanish we can't either. So in this case, how much water is there? So in this case, we're talking about again, we're talking about the quantity, but think about it here. We don't say 4 waters. Instead of that, we think about the container. In this case, the container is a bottle, right? So how many bottles do we have here? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So how much water is there? So we can say that there are, well, I'm sorry, it's 4. There are 4 bottles, not 6. There are 4 bottles. I'm going to explain that later about the difference between how many and how much. Okay, the next one we have, how much tuna is there? We're talking about again here the quantity. So it's not possible to say the specific quantity that we have about tuna. What's the meaning of tuna? We have atún, right? How much tuna is there? So we don't know exactly the quantity of the content of this can. This is a can, una lata. So in this case, we use the container to know about the quantity of this object. So how much tuna is there? We have there. So we have only 1 can. There is 1 can. Okay. Okay. Another example. How much rice is there? Well, it's impossible to count rice because it's endless. I mean, it's not easy to do it. So in that case, we think about in the container here, the container that we have a pack. A pack means paquete. So if we want to know about the quantity, in this case, about this picture, we say how much rice is there. So we have there is a pack. Hay un paquete, right? Okay. So I want to ask you something here. So is it possible to count food? Probably we can. Certain things we can count them, right? Can we count food? Sometimes. But we have to keep in mind that, for example, in Spanish, we can say un pan, dos panes, tres panes, right? In English, is not possible. English is different in this aspect from Spanish, right? So for that, we have to keep in mind 2 words, something that's very important. Countable nouns and uncountable nouns. So in order to know if food or if a noun, if words can be counted, we have to think about that if they're countable or uncountable. Okay, so keep in mind here, English and Spanish are different in this aspect. Some food that it's countable in Spanish, it's not countable in English. So let's check. For example, here, bread. So remember what is bread? Pan. We have juice, jugo, coffee, soup, sopa. So we have to think about, for example, these words. It's very common that we can count them in Spanish, right? Un pan, dos panes, un jugo, tres jugos, un café, tres cafés, una sopa, dos sopas, right? In Spanish, it's possible, but in English, it's not. So I'm going to explain you a little bit more in detail. Okay, so let's gonna start. Okay, when we're talking about here, countable nouns. So it means that countable nouns are the words that you can count using numbers. You can say 1, 2, 3, okay, 1 apple, 2 apples, 3 apples. Those things are countable. It means that you can use numbers, okay? Another thing that we have to keep in mind about these ones is that countable nouns are singular or plural. Can be singular or plural. For example, 1 apple or 20 apples, right? 1 tomato or a tomato and 20 tomatoes, right? They can be singular or plural. Other rule that it says about these countable nouns is that when they are singular, when you're talking about only one, you can use the articles. What articles? I want to show you what articles here. These articles. The article a and an. And an means un, una, right? So what's the difference between them? So we use a when the word starts with a consonant. For example, a, okay? And the rule says that you use it when it starts with a consonant. A, okay, we have a consonant here, B. A banana, right? Un banana, right? And the other one, and we use an apple. It says according to the rule that you use and when the word starts with a vowel, an apple. Una manzana, when we're talking about only one, okay? And okay, when you want to ask about the quantity of something, about countable nouns, you use how many are there. Examples. So if you want to ask and answer, that's another, about the quantity of countable nouns, we use how many. That's very important. With countable nouns, use how many. For example, in these pictures, I want to know about the number of bananas that we have here in the picture. So we have 1, 2, 3. But what would be the correct way to ask? So we have how many bananas, because we have the plural, are there, right? So we have in plural here, remember that we use are in plural, right? How many bananas are there? ¿Cuántas bananas hay? The answer, there are 3 bananas. There are, it means plural, plural. There are 3 bananas, okay? The other example, how many apples are there? So we have how many apples are there? And we have only 1. It means there is, we use there is when we're talking about only one. We can say there is 1 apple or there is an apple, okay? Okay, we have countable, uncountable nouns. Those are the uncountable nouns are the words that you cannot use numbers. We can count using numbers, right? Most of the times they're singular. In these ones, you cannot use or and with these words. For example, it's not possible to say, you can say, okay, we can say water. There is water. But it's not possible to say there is a water, right? It's not possible to say those things. So remember that in uncountable nouns, you can say, you cannot use a or an. For questions, you have to use how much is there. Example. So we have here, how much, when we're talking about uncountable, you use how much. When we want to know about the quantity, how much chocolate is there? How much chocolate is there? So it's singular, there is a bar of chocolate, right? So only when we're talking about, remember that uncountable nouns always goes in singular. And the other one, how much water is there? Remember that it's not possible to say una agua, dos aguas, tres aguas. In Spanish we can, but in English we can't. So in this case, we think about in the container, 1, 2, 3. There are 3 bottles of water. Okay. Okay. There's another. You use different containers and quantifiers. Something that we have to keep in mind is to count the uncountable nouns. You can use containers or quantities in order that you can count uncountable nouns, or if you want to be very specific with the quantity of food. For example, we have containers like can, lata, bottle, botella, jar, tarro, box, caja, package, paquete, plate, plato, glass, vaso. Or quantities, we have a pound, una libra, a kilo, half of, media de, pound, kilo, una libra, a liter, a spoon, una cucharada, or a punch. So you can use those vocabulary in order that you can have the chance to make it countable. Okay. Okay. Remember, we use there is and there are with questions. There is when you use singular. Okay. Remember, and there are when we're talking about plural. Example. How many carrots? Zanahorias. How many carrots? It means it's plural are there. Can you count the carrots? Of course. So in this case, there is 1 carrot or there is a carrot. And the other, how much, we're talking about uncountable. Coffee, it's uncountable. So how much coffee is there? It's possible to say that there is a cup of coffee. There is a bottle with coffee and those kind of things. Okay. Please let me know if you have some questions.